everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Chin-Quee Chats, the bitesized podcast where we talk movies, sports, and everything in between. I'm your host, Matthew Chin-Quee, and this week I have another guest. I have someone who I've known for almost a year now, actually, just in the movie community, Mr. Ryan McKenna. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing well, Matthew. How are you?
Tired. I'm packing. Going back to school. I'm sure
I'm
you know
packing
all about
too.
packing.
Going to Oregon tomorrow.
Oregon?
Oregon.
Wow. What are you doing in Oregon?
Meeting up with some buddies from college.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been out there, but all I know about... See, we actually were having the conversation about this earlier, about how, a few days ago, about how I don't know anything about the U.S. states, and you being... Are you a citizen of both countries now?
No, I wish. That would be nice. America let me in.
But you having lived in the States, and I don't know, I guess you said that you learned the States in school up in Canada, but I guess maybe we just don't do that in Ontario, but I don't know anything about the States.
Yeah. Maybe it's an Alberta thing. I don't know.
But we, contrary to popular belief, we are not talking about the States this week. We are actually going to talk about Stephen King movies in honor of It, which is coming out this Friday, which I will not be watching.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't watch horror, and I watched one trailer and I was scared of it for like 3 days. And that I didn't even watch that trailer on purpose. It was just in front of Baby Driver and I had to, and I was stuck in the theater. I wanted to run out. But anyways, we're going to talk about Stephen King. Sorry?
I said I'm guessing you didn't go to Annabelle then.
No.
Okay.
Dolls are the worst. Dolls and horror, I'm afraid of the Muppets just by themselves, and they're not horror. And they're kind of like dolls, and then you combine them, that's like my worst nightmare. No thanks.
They played like a 3 to 4 minute scene of it at the front of that movie.
Oh my god. I would just die.
Yeah.
Going into a horror movie and then getting a preview for another horror movie with clowns, and I don't really like clowns either. But yeah, this week we're going to talk about Stephen King's films, just our favorite, and then an honorable mention. And this week I'm actually going to cut the cinema chat a little bit short because, as many of you know, the Game of Thrones season 7 finale aired this past Sunday, and both Ryan and I are avid fans of the show and avid fans of the books, so we want to spend a bit more time in the free chat talking about that, this being a big milestone kind of in the whole Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones world. But we're going to start off and talk about the cinema chat. We're going to get right into it. Ryan, what is your favorite Stephen King movie?
Okay, so when you gave me this question, I was having a lot of trouble because there's a few like choices that seem obvious, and there's reasons why they're obvious. But then I thought about it some more, and it's maybe not the best movie based on his work, but it's the movie that means the most to me. And that is Stand By Me. This movie from the mid-'80s is just, it is the perfect picture of this like quasi-horror movie, but like really a really great coming-of-age movie. I saw that movie at exactly the right time when I was probably 10, maybe a little bit younger, I'm not sure. But in any case, when I first saw that movie, I was just blown away by it. And every time that movie comes on, like, I just can't help but be drawn into these 4 kids and their relationship and what they're going through when they find this dead body in the woods. And it's just like, it's a fascinating little film that just gets me every time. And really, it's Stephen King's like ability to grasp youth with his writing, which was then obviously transferred to the screen, that I think really gets me, and why I'm excited for a film like It coming up, and why things like Stranger Things invest me so much. It all comes back to what Stand By Me did for me as a child.
Yeah, this is funny. I was actually going to choose Stand By Me as my number one too, and I had actually just seen this movie for the first time for about 3-4 days ago. I was looking for something to do, and I just got access to an HBO Go thing, so Stand By Me was on there, and I decided to throw it on, and I wound up loving it. Now, I don't think that it's perfect. I think that just in terms of this film, the the B plot with the older kids, I think that could have been cut out a little bit.
Mm.
Just because up until the end, and I get how they're so important in the end, up until then, I really didn't care what was going on with them, and they really annoyed me. I didn't really like them either, especially Kiefer Sutherland's character. I mean, he's really good in it, but I don't like that kid at all. And granted, I don't think you're supposed to like that kid, but just the four main kids in Stand By Me, it is one of the best coming of age films because with each character has a scene where you can develop their background and see just where their character flaws are, just learn everything about them, and each character gets their own time to shine. You have River Phoenix's character when he's sitting there crying his eyes out on watch, or when they're wading through the water with the leeches, or running away from the dogs, or the stories that, I just watched this movie a few days ago. I don't remember the characters' names, but the stories that the one character is telling, Gordy, I think it is.
Oh, yeah.
The writer.
Mm.
All of it is so fascinating as just a character study, given the background of this film is four kids looking for a dead body, looking just to kind of be famous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's just like, it's that movie that just like totally captures you. And yeah, I just, it's one of those coming of age movies that is like really stuck with me over the years, which is why, even though you're right, I don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it's the most technically proficient movie about a Stephen King book, but it's my favorite.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine what it'd be like to watch it as a kid, because I haven't gone out, or when I was a kid, I didn't go out looking for dead bodies, but I had my brother and I and our neighbors, we would always be out around that age, just going out on our own adventures and doing that same kind of stuff, making fun of each other, but still, having each other's backs. So I can't even imagine what it would be like to have that hit you as a kid.
Yeah, and we have a lot of like woods up by where I'm from. So, we just did a lot of roaming around like ravines and stuff, getting to places. So, you'd reenact a few things here and there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you don't want to find a body, and you certainly never did, but
Yeah.
It's fun.
So because mine was kind of picked, I'm going to go with my runner-up, and then my runner-up is going to be my runner-up to the runner-up. So my favorite Stephen King film, other than Stand By Me, would then be The Green Mile. And this is... you don't sound very impressed with that.
No, it's a great film. It just surprises me.
Yeah, as I said before, Stephen King has just a whole wide range of films, and he is known mostly for his horror. So you have some of his other great films, like, I don't know if they're great. I've heard they're great. I'm not watching them. Like Carrie or Pet Sematary, stuff like that. But the ones that really stuck with me are the ones that obviously I've seen, and Green Mile really stuck with me just because, again, of the characters. Now, Stephen King seems to be a type of writer who can take almost, I don't want to say it's a mundane backdrop, because finding a body or working on death row isn't exactly mundane, but it's not something that the premise doesn't really jump at you. But what Stephen King does, I think, best is create great characters, sympathetic characters, and characters you can understand. And in Green Mile, you have John Coffey, and then you have played by Michael Clark Duncan, and you have Tom Hanks's character, who are really two driving forces in this. And the mystical aspect of this film, and how this seemingly sweet, almost innocent guy has come to be in this place, and just the explorations of how he interacts with everybody from the guards to the other prisoners is really fascinating, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, The Green Mile was a movie that like really got me as a kid. I saw it like definitively too young for that movie, but Michael Clark Duncan and Tom Hanks really give great performances in that movie. So I think that's what draws me to that, and it's one of his great dramas, or a drama based on a Stephen King work. So definitely a very solid pick on your part there.
Yeah, and I think the moment that really gets me is when he goes to, I think it's the warden's wife, and heals her, and that's when
Mm.
everybody's just like, this is the real deal, and that just makes the ending hit you all that more hard. And the film has incredible villain kind of driving as the antagonist in that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So now for your runner-up, who did you choose?
Okay, so see, I'm not going to pick either the two obvious runner-ups either, which I feel bad about. I'm going to shout them out because I have to. The Shawshank Redemption and The Shining are both incredible movies, and I feel bad for not picking them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the next Stephen King movie that like has gotten to me the most, and in a very different way than Stand by Me, is Misery, which is like this really twisted movie about a fan who abducts an author of her like favorite book series after he like gets in an accident and she's like nursing him back to health. But then like she isn't satisfied with how he's ending this book, so she's like keeping him like locked up and forcing him to write the next chapter in this story. And it's just so like creepy and intense. And there's a scene in that movie that you can't unsee. And it's one of those things in cinema that like that will sit with me forever, that I don't like even thinking about that scene, I just can't get past it. And that's why I think like Misery is such a powerful movie. Kathy Bates is incredible, and um there's just something about that again, maybe not the most critically lauded of Stephen King's works, although it definitely got its accolades. It's the one that like still gets me every time I think about it.
Yeah, I'm looking over the description of this film, and would you say that that scene that you're describing, it's not so much horror, but more just unsettling, and that's why it sticks with you?
uh sure, yeah.
Yeah, I can't really talk attest to it because I haven't seen it, but the premise itself, it sounds really interesting, and it sounds like
Mhm.
something that could almost conceivably happen, which is kind of creepy-er in a sense.
Yeah, it's a film that definitively could happen, which makes it
And
really eerie.
and I think when a horror or a psychological thriller like that, you can see something happen like that, that just makes it stick with you all that more because you're just sitting there. It's like, what if something like this is happening right now, and that kind of scares you.
Ugh.
Yeah. So my runner-up would be one that you've already mentioned. That would be The Shawshank Redemption.
Mhm.
And I'm not somebody who thinks that. I still don't get why when people are mentioning best movies of all time, they put Shawshank up there. It's a great movie, and hence why it's in my number two Stephen King movie, the runner up. But I don't see why people put it so high, um, as one of the best films of all time. Do you agree with that, or what do you think? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I love The Shawshank Redemption, and I think that particularly what Morgan Freeman does in that movie, like is something just infectious, and I love everything about his performance. But every time I watch that movie, I'm like, okay, this is the very, very good movie, very well put together. Frank Darabont does a great job directing, but like, there's nothing about it that's like, I am the greatest. And
Yeah,
I think that that's kind of where it just like, it's a solid movie to put on, but it's never one that like has spoken to me in the way that it seems to have for a lot of people.
yeah. I feel like this term is a little bit too negative, but for me, when I watched the Shawshank Redemption, it's serviceable in the best kind of way.
Mm.
There's nothing that really pops out to me as something like The Godfather would, or something like Star Wars would, as being one of the most iconic, influential films of all time. Because it's not like you haven't seen a film like this where it's a man escaping from prison, or it's not like you've haven't explored themes like this before, or even had performances as good as this. But it has just the right mix of story, just the right mix of acting, just the right mix of writing to make it an incredible film and something that is really great on a rewatch and really uplifting. And also has a really good scene for anybody to reenact in the rain. When it's really raining, just go outside and, put your arms out and scream. So
Totally.
I love to do that.
Find yourself doing that often.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
But that just about wraps up the Stephen King talk. As I said, I wanted to keep it a little bit short so we can go on to Game of Thrones. Just our thoughts about season 7 and, so on. So we're going to take a quick break and then come back with an extra long free chat segment to talk about Game of Thrones. And we are back for the free chat segment. And as I said before, we are going to be talking about the world of Ice and Fire, from the books to the critically acclaimed TV show, and basically a phenomenon that's swept over the entire world. Like, you can't go on the street and talk about Game of Thrones without someone saying, well, without either one, someone screaming spoilers at you, or two, being like, oh man, I love that show. So yeah, Game of Thrones is huge. I'm assuming you're a fan, Ryan.
Oh, I'm a big Ice and Fire fan.
Now, just starting from the beginning, when did you start reading the books first, or did you start watching the show first?
I started watching the show. A friend of mine borrowed the DVDs from a friend in his fraternity, like the season 1 DVDs, in between seasons 2 and 3, and we put them on in our college dorm room and watched them as like a crew. And I was just instantly drawn. And then another friend of mine and I stayed up all night watching most of the first season. And then we plowed through the second season before season 3 started. And I was like, no, I have to read these books. So then I started reading the books, and I got through the first book halfway through season 3 airing. I got through the second book by the end of season 3. And then I read, or wait, no, I got through half of the third book by the end of season 3, and then went on from there.
Yeah, I'm looking at a box set of all 5 of those books, and they can be incredibly daunting for somebody who hasn't really read that much fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I also started with the show, and I think a lot of people started with the show, just because in the literary world, I guess these books are pretty big, but just in terms of the general population knowing about them before Game of Thrones, I don't think many people were really as aware of its existence as compared to, the biggest book series probably ever, like Harry Potter, something like that. Yeah, I started, I think in season 3, and I remember I binge watched them over the summer, and this is full spoilers, by the way, for Game of Thrones, up until season 7, and I knew the Red Wedding was coming, but I didn't know what episode, and I remember it was 1 a.m. I was watching that, and I saw Talisa get stabbed in the belly, and I just sat there shocked, and I legitimately lost sleep over it. I was like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what to do. I knew it was coming, but I wasn't prepared for it. And I think that's what this show does to you. It took a lot of the tropes in the fantasy genre and kind of twisted them on its head, or turned them on its head, and took it in directions that were both more realistic and more shocking for its viewers and readers.
Yeah, it was definitely bold, and it wasn't afraid to do things that a lot of other shows wouldn't have the gusto to do. And the reason why I had to correct myself about Storm of Swords is because I had read The Red Wedding before I saw it on screen, which I was very thankful happened, because it gave me some context that was maybe not there as much in the show. But I think that overall the show has been a phenomenal adaptation of an almost impossible work to adapt. And I every time I watch it, I'm just so blown away that this exists, and also that people like it. Every time I watch this show is I'm really into all these ridiculous houses and what they're doing and all these inner house politics, but there are so many people I know who couldn't care less about real world or otherwise other fantasy politics
Mm-hmm.
who get like super into this. I'm just like, what? Like, where is this coming from? But I guess it is just the characters have captured people in ways that almost nothing has recently.
This whole series, after reading the books now, they are both incredibly dense and rich. I don't think George R. R. Martin gets enough credit just for the entire world that he's built. Like he has a whole encyclopedia of fake history about it, and he's coming out with a second one. Instead of working on Winds of Winter, but that's a whole other issue I have with George R. R. Martin.
Motherfucker. Pardon my language. But
That's okay. But the whole world, expansive world that he's made that's a daunting task for anybody to put on screen and make it so that you don't feel like you're just watching the History Channel. And I thoroughly believe that seasons 1 to 4 are perfect television and perfect adaptations. They make, and the key word here being adaptations, because it's not directly from page to screen, but they make little changes here. Some that are really good, some that actually improve the book, and some that I don't agree with, but they still work within the context. And I think that's really what's really drawn both book readers and just general audiences to this show. Yeah.
No, for sure. And then there are some, I have to point this out because you didn't. There are some that make it worse. There are some things the book does better. But
yeah. And while we're talking about that, I think we can start with just these past 3 seasons. Starting with season 5, I think that's when the quality started to decline a little bit. And I'm not somebody who wants them to stick directly to the books and they always have to stay directly, but there is something to be said with staying on, for lack of a better phrase, staying on target with the books and staying with the storylines. But season 5 started to diverge, and while that can happen, and it has happened in the series before, the way they just started to diverge and that took the show in a little bit different direction that may have irked some of the book readers. What do you think about kind of how they split off starting in season 5 and then kind of the ripple effect that it has had in season 6 and 7?
Well, I think that some of the choices in season 5, I think you're right, have created sort of ripple effects. To be honest, there's like a lot of questions that I have just based on the things that they've changed. There's a character who seems kind of important in the books who's just not in the show, like, at all. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess that character means nothing, or what? Like, what? Yeah. Like, there's a lot of things where I just sat there, like, when I was reading Dance with Dragons, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, where is this going to go? Since this isn't, in this TV show that I'm watching. But I think that, I don't know that I necessarily feel like it has dropped off in quality. But I think that it is sort of changed focus and has become these sort of like larger scale things that we haven't necessarily seen, or that we haven't seen, frankly, on television before. And these sequences continue to be amazing, but I sometimes worry that we're losing some of the like quieter moments that I think that the books are going to end up capturing more of.
Just in terms of season 7 alone, with the logistics of shortening the season, and I understand that from a business side with HBO, with some of where the story has gone, with dragons being full grown and Daenerys coming to Westeros, and armies which are bound to clash, the budget has to skyrocket. And I'll never, while I believe that the show's quality has dropped somewhat, I'll never say it's a bad show, just because the show has set itself far above and beyond any other show that's on television. Even just looking at the technical aspects, from the VFX to the production side, there's no other show ever, in my opinion, that has done this. And created and crafted the story and adapted the story in such a way that that captures the attention of so many people and does it so skillfully. I just don't think that. And granted, this could be just an issue of the creators not having access to the full stories anymore because they've gone past the books, and they never really signed on to create their own story. They really signed on to adapt a story that's already been written. So maybe that's not something that they were prepared for. But with season 7, I think that the fact that it's so compressed is why we're not getting some of those quieter moments or as much character development as we would have liked to seen.
Yeah, I think you're definitely on point there. I was interested when they said that they were going to shorten the season, just to see where that would go. But now that I've seen it, I really, I kind of wish that we had those extra 3 episodes of breathing room. I know that a lot of people hate the filler episodes, but most of my favorite moments from Game of Thrones, frankly, are from filler episodes, and are from filler moments. Like, there are great moments in Game of Thrones, and don't get me wrong, those all stand out. But I just feel like we could have spent a lot more time. Winterfell is a storyline that could have used a lot more time in season 7. Frankly, as a book reader, I was bothered how fast that everybody seemed to be traveling around Westeros. I was like, you're really getting around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, fine, like that's only going to bother such a small proportion of people. And like I said, or you're right, that the show is far superior to anything else. Like, there's nothing that remotely compares to what Game of Thrones is doing or has done. But I just think that it could use more the King's Roads. And I might even give up a major sequence from this season in favor of that. Like, I might give up. Well, the loot train was so good. It's the problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have really the bar, which is really cool, but
it really isn't that important. But it was good.
It was cool to see, but within the story, they technically really didn't have to show it, other than just to show the power of the dragons and show that Cersei's weapon really doesn't make a dent in the dragons at all.
That was very Game of Thrones. I appreciated that. That just didn't work. It's like, okay.
What I really liked is that because Drogon was shot with that and kind of just shrugged it off, like he screams for a bit, starts to fall, and he's like, wait a second, this doesn't hurt, and just goes and blows it up. It gives you a false sense of security, a lot like what had happened in the previous seasons with the dragons, only to have another one die from a kind of similar spear-ish weapon in episode 6. So it gives you that false sense of security. You're like, okay, the dragons will be fine, nothing can really hurt them that much. And then the Night King Kobe's it, and like his Olympic style throw from, like, I don't know, some super far away, just spears Viserion.
Yeah, well, the Night King's like magical ice spear, like, that you figured that had to be the tool that takes down a dragon. So I was convinced that was kind of how that was going to go. But it was just sort of, see, that's the sequence that I most want to get rid of, because like I didn't really need that, but you need, I guess, Viserion to bite it. But at the same time, that sequence is one of like the most problematic sequences of the season. But in any case, I think that they've played to these major set pieces, and I hope that even though the last season is even shorter for some reason, despite the fact that I feel like we have 3 more seasons worth of stuff to get through, just based on where we're sitting at right now. This final season is even shorter than this one, so I don't know where they're going to go with that. And I really kind of hope that they change their mind in HBO. Like, we could really use another year's worth of subscriptions. So we're going to make 2 more seasons.
Yeah, just coming back to the quieter moments, I think there is something to be said. I mean, a lot of people, and this is a very divisive issue amongst Game of Thrones fans, about whether you should show the passage of time as more realistic, or just kind of go at this breakneck pace that season 7 has been going at. On one hand, you have stuff like the Field of Fire or big, great action set pieces where, such as in episode 6, where I agree it's problematic, but just as an action set piece, I really love that entire battle above the wall. Story wise, it's a little bit iffy as to, you know, the timing or just even the motivations or the reasoning of going up there. So you have those really cool moments in the super fast paced, but when you slow it down, you get great character moments such as Jamie being a prisoner throughout basically the first half of the show, or the Hound and Arya moments, some of everybody's book readers and show watchers' favorite moments in the show period, and you get great traveling moments like that. And I think that we have lost them and are going to continue to lose those type of moments if season 8 is shortened. Granted, yeah. I will still enjoy it either way. I'm still gonna watch it because it's getting those big plot points down, stuff that I've wanted resolved for years now, and finally getting a definitive answer, such as R plus L equals J, Jon Snow's parentage, or finally having huge characters like Jon and Cersei and Tyrion meeting up again, and having scenes like the Dragon Pit scene that we had in the finale. But I agree, there is something to be said about filling that other stuff in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I could use more scenes like the Dragon Pit scene. Like, that's kind of what I think the show needs. And, as you sort of alluded to, like, none of this, nothing that I should be saying here should be interpreted as like, oh, I think this is like a garbage show or something, or that even I would consider stopping watching. I love Game of Thrones. It's my favorite show probably ever. And like, I'm interested to see where it's going to end up. I just wish that they would play up these characters a little bit more, because if you look at those first few seasons, which aren't, everybody's got their qualms with one thing or another, but I think that the way that they built these character themes, and even when the character themes pop up now, like, those are still the most interesting parts of the show. So yeah.
Yeah, stuff like Peter Baelish's death in the finale, and you mentioned it before, the whole Winterfell sequence. I had read that they actually had more in there, more written and more filmed, that they cut out because of the whole shortened season. And that is something that I really think could have been fleshed out, and you really needed that filler, and you really needed those character moments, because just watching, if you're binging the show from season 1 to season 7 and you get to those Winterfell episodes and you see Sansa and Arya acting that way, it's almost nonsensical, the reasoning with both of them. I mean, Arya gets mad at Sansa for working for the enemies, when in season 2 she literally spent half the season working for Tywin Lannister, and she's talking about how Sansa was parading around or being, all ladylike at her dad's execution, when she's literally screaming and fainting. So the whole playing up or trying to play Littlefinger's game, I think we could have gotten a little bit more in there. And that's just to name one example, and that's kind of the whole overarching problem with Game of Thrones right now. And again, don't misconstrue my words. I still love Game of Thrones, but they do have a huge, big overarching problem with kind of skipping these smaller moments, the smaller moments that really made the show and really made you fall in love with the story and characters from the beginning, that I'm not sure will be resolved given what we know about season 8 and the finale season.
And I think there's got to be, like, and getting back to this Winterfell storyline, because it's, I guess, the easiest to pick on. There's got to be a scene between Sansa, Bran, and Arya, or Sansa and Arya, in between Arya, like, basically saying that she could just cut off Sansa's face in her room. That
was so weird.
To being, like, in this plot to kill Baelish at the end. Like, they're all in on it, so they've clearly talked. And I'm like, why didn't we see this conversation?
Yeah, part of me understands why they wanted to go kind of for that big what a twist thing where she goes and it seems that she's talking to Arya and then turns to Baelish. But I really like the actor for Bran. He said that him and Sansa, or him and Sophie Turner just filmed a scene together where Sansa goes and it says, "I need your help." And then that, I think that even, a 5-minute scene like that would have been enough to fill in the blanks there, so that we still kind of get that shocking twist where she's not obviously not going to arrest and execute her sister, but she's going to arrest Littlefinger. But the way it is right now, it feels like we kind of almost skipped an episode, something in between, that we've missed something. Yeah. But I think that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank you, Ryan, for coming on. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show. Nothing in particular, but everybody should just go over to geeksandgamers.com and read all the wonderful articles we're putting out. It's going to be a slow review weekend that you just got. I guess this comes out on Sunday, so that you guys just got through. But we're going to be powering through the month of September. So keep an eye out for lots of great stuff coming.
Yeah, August is always pretty slow, but we're getting almost into award season already, and I can't believe how fast we're back already in award season. I'm excited for it. I'm
gonna start having to think about what's the best of the year.
Yeah, exactly. As usual, you guys can find me on Twitter at CQ_chats, or my personal Twitter, where you'll see me probably yelling a lot more than on the CQ chats. I'm Chin-Quee 96. As always, thank you for... Oh, wait. Check out the iTunes feed, the Geek Pulse Radio Network, where you can find all our shows. We're adding more and more shows as September goes on. Soon we're going to have a show every single day, which is going to be really cool. So check out my podcast there. Check out all the other podcasts there, because they're really great. Some really great contributors there. But as always, thank you for listening all the way through, if you made it this far, and I will chat with you guys next week.
Shazam.
Shazam!